Boa noite, pessoal. Hoje a gente vai ter o nosso encontro com a nossa convidada especial, a Tami. Quero agradecer a presença também de todos que estão aqui em nosso encontro. Muito bem-vindos ao nosso grupo Judaísmo para Todos. E meu nome é Nihad Bassis, e eu vou coordenar a apresentação de hoje, tá? Para quem não conhece e está vendo o nosso vídeo pela primeira vez no YouTube, nosso grupo Judaísmo para Todos é um grupo de estudo criado pela comunidade Cibra, Sociedade Israelita Brasileira de Cultura e Beneficência, de Porto Alegre, e fundada pelo nosso querido Carlos Vengrover. O propósito do grupo Judaísmo para Todos é, através de estudo e discussões saudáveis, promover uma compreensão inclusiva e acessível do judaísmo. Nós contamos como membro da coordenação o nosso querido Mário Becker, Mário Leiser, a Kátia de Cessar, eu e nosso querido Carlos Vengrover. Então, vamos fazer a oração de abertura agora, e aí a gente passa para o tema da palestra. Vamos lá. Bendito és tu, Adonai, nosso Deus, Rei do Universo, e nos santificou por seus mandamentos, nos ordenou a nos ocupar com as palavras da Torá. Bendito és tu, Adonai, que ensina a tua Torá ao teu povo de Israel. Amém. Então, o tema de hoje o título que a gente colocou lá no site, o nosso tema, se chama As Mulheres do Muro. E quem vai palestrar para nós hoje é a Tami Gottlieb. A Tami está aqui com a gente, olha só, lá em Israel, ela está em Jerusalém, mais ou menos, agora são mais ou menos 2h. Então a gente quer agradecer profundamente a participação, a disponibilidade e energia dela para dividir conosco a experiência e a história dessa organização, tá bom? A Tami, ela é originária da cidade de Rehovot, vive hoje em Jerusalém, e ela é diretora da Signing Anil, uma ONG israelense que apoia a organização de ação social. Ela foi criada, a Tami foi criada e educada em um lar massorti, conservador, e é membro de longa data da congregação Adat Shalom Emanuel, em Rehovot. Ela serviu como soldada combatente no batalhão Caracal da IDF, quando apenas algumas mulheres ingressavam em uma unidade de combate. Tami atua como membro do conselho da Organização Sionista Mundial e é membro da Women of the Wall há 15 anos e atualmente é vice-presidente da organização. Mulheres do Muro, ou Neshot HaKotel, é uma organização feminista judaica multidenominacional que realiza serviços mensais de oração para mulheres em Rosh Hodesh, e cujo objetivo é garantir os direitos das mulheres de rezar no Muro das Lamentações de uma forma que inclua canto, leitura em voz alta da Torá e vestindo vestimentas religiosas, talit, tefilin e kippah. Então, feita a apresentação, vamos passar para a parte da apresentação da Tami. E para quem chegou agora há pouco, a forma de escutar a interpretação simultânea é ativando ali embaixo, no seu canal, na sua tela do Zoom, a opção interpretação. Se não aparecer o botão, você tem que ir na opção opções, embaixo, ou mais, ou talvez até escrito configurações ou parâmetros, tem muitas versões, viu? E ativar a interpretação. Então, a gente vai começar agora com a presença da nossa querida Tami e a tradução da nossa querida Reide. Reide, muito obrigado pela tua disponibilidade nessa tradução. Tami, we are ready. It's up to you now to share your experience. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I just think there's a bit of noise from someone.
I'm gonna put in mute.
Okay.
It's red, yeah.
Oi, boa noite, gente. My name is Tami. I am a member of an organization called Women of the Wall, and that's what I'm going to talk about this evening. Niad gave my biography, but there's I don't know if he said it. I try to understand. I was born in Rehovot, in a town called Rehovot in Israel. But my parents came to Israel, made Aliyah a few in the early 80s. My mother from London and my father from Rio. So I've got a Brazilian family, and I still have lots of family in Rio de Janeiro, and they're still very involved in the Ari congregation there. I'm sure some of you know some of the people there. So my Portuguese is mais ou menos. I know like a few words, but I'm sure in the translation that doesn't matter anyway. So saying that, I was born to a family that is probably third generation liberal Jewish, because like I said, my family was has always been very involved in Ari. My grandparents and their parents are from the founders of Ari. So I was born and raised a liberal Jew, and in Israel, I'm sure some of you know the issues in Israel. Being a liberal Jew is different. The monopoly on Jewish life and Jewish identity was given by Ben Gurion and the establishment of Israel to the ultra-Orthodox, to the Haredim, or to the Orthodox stream in Judaism. So in Israel, every time we need to do something that's bureaucratical and to do with Jewish life, then we have to do it in the Orthodox way. So we can't get married with a conservative rabbi or reform rabbi here, okay? They can't conduct the marriage ceremony because weddings have to be Orthodox weddings, which obviously means that gay couples can't get married in Israel because it doesn't go according to Jewish halacha in its Orthodox perception. But it also means that couples that are liberal couples, that want to have an egalitarian chuppah, where the woman also blesses the man and the man blesses the woman, and it's more egalitarian, that can't happen in Israel. It's not legal. So my sisters, when they got married, they had a masorti, a conservative wedding ceremony. Their weddings aren't recognized in Israel. They're not recognized as married in Israel. That's a problem. That's a problem that I grew up into because I grew up to a conservative synagogue. My parents, when they met in Israel, they're both scientists, okay? So they met here in the Weizmann Institute in Rehovot, in the Weizmann Institute. It's a science institute, and they got married, and they lived in the town of Rehovot, where this place is, and there was only one liberal synagogue, which is a conservative synagogue, not a reform, Masorti. I'm not sure there's one in Porto Alegre, right? I don't know.
Liberal.
There's the liberal, so it's like Shalom in São Paulo.
Yeah.
That's a Masorti synagogue. So I grew up in the Masorti stream, which is a bit something between Reform and Orthodox. But it is egalitarian, which means when I had my bat mitzvah, I did a bat mitzvah. So I read from the Torah and I put on tefilin, and I was very involved in that way. But for the kids in my class, it was a crazy concept, okay? People didn't understand what I'm doing. A girl to have a bat mitzvah, it's just something that people then, when I had my bat mitzvah, something like 30 years ago, a bit less than 30 years ago, it was a very, very dramatic concept. So the kids in my class, they didn't want to come and join me in the bat mitzvah. I invited them to Bet Knesset, but they didn't come because it's something that Israelis don't, if you're doing Judaism, then you want to do it right, okay, you want to do it the Orthodox way. Or there's also another concept that Israelis are scared of synagogues because they're afraid that the synagogues will take their kids and make them become fanatic religious people, and that's something that that scares Israelis very much. So it's okay. I was a popular girl, and I just didn't have kids coming to my bat mitzvah. I did have kids from the youth movement coming to my bat mitzvah. I grew up in a youth movement called Noam, which exists still today. Again, in Sao Paulo, they have a big branch of Noam in Shalom congregation. And that's where I grew up. And growing up in a youth movement, in a Jewish conservative Masorti youth movement, I knew that being a liberal Jew in Israel is something that is discriminated. We're discriminated against, not only the weddings, okay? It's in everything in our lives. You can't be buried in a non Orthodox cemetery if you're Jewish. There's only one kind of kashrut supervision, that's the Orthodox supervision. Basically, the state of Israel, the Jewish state, is the only country in the Western world where Jews don't have Jewish freedom. Okay, the only country in the Western world where Jews don't practice Jewish freedom is the Jewish state. And that's an historical mistake that needs to be fixed. And I have worked a big time in my life to fixing this, because I grew up seeing the injustice. So when I was 18, I did really a whole path of a conservative Israeli Jew. And when I was 18, I went into the army together with my friends from the youth movement, and I was one of the first combat soldiers in Israel, women combat soldiers in one of the first platoons many years ago. And that's it. When I finished the army, I came to Brazil for a few months. I stayed with my vovo, and then I went to England for a few months, and I stayed with my family there. And that's what Israelis do after the army. They go to see the world. And then I came back and I started working in Noam, in the youth movement of the conservative movement. And a few months into my work, I heard on the news that a woman was arrested in the Kotel for having her talit on. She was wearing a talit in the Western Wall, and she was arrested. Now, I heard this on the news, and I actually think I was in Rio when this happened, and I was shocked. And I was scared that this is very dangerous to me as a liberal Jew in Israel. It's very dangerous for the concept of the state of Israel. You know, we can be arrested for doing things that are a democratic right. You know, there's nothing wrong with, shouldn't be anything wrong with being or practicing your Jewish identity or your religious identity, especially if it's a practice that isn't harmful or isn't not moral. And that was when I decided to join Women of the Wall. This arrest took place in a Women of the Wall prayer, and I went the month after. I went for my first Women of the Wall prayer, and I've been part of this organization ever since. This was in 2008, so 16 years I've been a member of Women of the Wall. Now let's go a bit to the history of Women of the Wall. In 1988, 35 years ago, a group of women was here in Israel for a conference of the religious feminist woman. They were staying in a hotel in the center of Jerusalem. There were a few tens of women, 40 or 50 women in this conference from all denominations. Okay, there were Reform women and Orthodox women and conservative women, because the connecting thing was that they're all religious, they all care about religion, and they're all feminists. And during their conference, one day was supposed to be Rosh Chodesh, the first day of the Jewish month. And they said to themselves, what a wonderful opportunity. We can create a festive prayer for Rosh Chodesh. Every Rosh Chodesh is a bit of a festive prayer. You say a prayer called Hallel, which is something you say in festivities in Judaism. And they decided that they want to dedicate the prayer on Rosh Chodesh morning for womanhood and sisterhood. And they were going to have a women's prayer. Now, a women's prayer also in Orthodoxy is basically a prayer that only has women. And if we go to the Orthodox concept of it, they just don't say, there's some things that in egalitarian prayers, like what we do, you say everything when you have a minyan of people. A minyan is 10 people above the age of 12 or 13, 12 women, 13 men. 13 the age. In Orthodox Judaism, there's some things that the minyan is only 10 men, okay, above the age of 13. That's why in Orthodox synagogues there's a mechitza, there's a separation between men and women, and there's some things that you can only practice when you're 10 men. And this first prayer was actually supposed to be a bit like that, okay? They were going to pray. Women are allowed to pray and are allowed to pray together if they want to, even in Orthodox Judaism. But the idea was for them to have a women's prayer that doesn't even say some of the things in the prayer because they weren't considered a minyan in the Orthodox eyes. Just have a prayer together out loud, women praying. But some of the women were Reform and conservative, so some of the women did use a talit, and they did want to read from the Torah, because that was also something they wanted to do for the festivities. And they asked the hotel for a Torah scroll and for a room. You know, hotels in Israel have Torah scrolls to lend to people because they have lots of ceremonies. They have people coming for weekends and having bar and bat mitzvahs there, so they have Torah scrolls. And the hotel manager gave them the room and gave them the Torah scroll and said, okay. But something like 24 hours before the event, the kashrut supervisor of the hotel, the person in charge of the kitchen, that the meat doesn't mix with dairy, okay? That person. He heard that the hotel wants to give a Torah scroll to this group of women. And he said, you can't allow it. And if you allow it, then I'll have to take away your kashrut supervision. Now, this is an important story because it shows that this connection between state and religion can be harmful not only in the places where it's in charge of, okay, this guy's in charge of kashrut, is in charge of the kitchen, but because they have all the power, they're a monopoly. This guy, this kashrut supervisor, the chief rabbanut of Israel is a monopoly. They can basically say anything because the hotel in Israel doesn't want its kashrut supervision to be taken away. So the hotel manager told this group of women, I'm very sorry, but you have to find a different solution. I can't give you the Torah scroll. I'll just say that today, the situation in hotels in Israel is kind of the same. Most hotels in Israel, if you come in a trip of your synagogue and you wanna have a Torah scroll, I don't think you would get one in, let's say, 80% of the hotels in Israel. So this group of women understood that they have an opportunity, and they said, let's go to the Kotel, to the Western Wall. We're so close. And they went to the Western Wall, and they started their prayer there. in the women's section of the Western Wall. So they enter the women's section of the Western Wall. I'll get to how the women's section was established in history in a second. But then this was 1988. The Western Wall was already divided the way we know it today, that there's a men's section and a women's section. They walk into the women's section to have a women's prayer, and they start praying, and balagan, bagunsa, okay? People start yelling at them, and the voices of women in the women's section of the Western Wall was a dramatic concept. People couldn't understand why there's a group of women that can be heard in the women's section, and people started attacking them. They started yelling at them and cursing and asking them to leave. Not only from the woman's side, also from the men's side, because they could hear from the other side of the mechitza, or they could understand that that there's something going on. And this group of women left. They didn't do the prayer to the end, and they left. I feel like Hedy is working very, very hard. Are you okay? Tá bom. Wonderful. So they left, and the Israeli women within the group, the Israeli women decided that they need to come back and make sure that women's voices are heard in this place, so that when women want to come and pray there, it won't create this kind of response. Okay, that the problem, as they understood it, was that the Kotel, the Western Wall, was silent from women's voices for 20 years. And what we need to do now, what they needed to do then, was make sure that women's voices are heard in the Kotel, so it's not such a drama when it does happen. So they founded Women of the Wall in 1988, okay, 36 years ago. And they've been coming to the Kotel ever since. They decided they'll come in the beginning of every Jewish month, have a Rosh Chodesh prayer. And that's what they've been doing for 30 years, 35 years. The issue with the prayer has always been two main issues. The first is the people that disagree with the Women of the Wall prayer. And that happened in the first prayer in 1988, and that happened in the last prayer 3 weeks ago. People that come and yell and protest and are violent. We'll get to the violence towards the end. Major problem. The second issue, and which is very important, is authorities. When you're being bullied, when someone is being harmful to you, you go to the authorities and you hope that the authorities you hope that the authorities will protect you. That's what the authorities are supposed to do. So they went to when they got to the first prayers of Women of the Wall, the month after and the month after, people were attacking them, and they're going to the authorities, and they're saying to the police, and they're saying to the Western Wall Heritage Fund, we are being attacked. And what did they do? They removed Women of the Wall from the Western Wall. That was their solution. Now, who are the authorities in the Western Wall? The Kotel has been back in Israeli hands since 1967. Okay, since the 6-Day War. I'm sure you all know the famous paratrooper photo in the Kotel. If not, I can show you. But that's when suddenly we have this place. And the political parties, the ultra-Orthodox political parties in Israel, the Haredi political parties, understood that they have here an important asset, political asset. They said, okay, this is an important place for the Jewish people. We want to be the ones running it because we run everything to do with religion in Israel, and we want to be the ones running it. And the other parties in the Israeli political system usually don't care so much about religion issues. So they said, okay, take it, but vote for the budget. Okay, I don't know what it was, but it was a political game. We give you this, and you can take this, and they got the right to run the Western Wall, which means they built a committee, a Western Wall Heritage Fund, that's what it's called, that is that has sitting on the board are only men, because that's the way things went in Israel, definitely 1988, 67, 68. Most of the men were ultra-Orthodox, were Haredim, some men from the Jerusalem municipality and other roles, but most of them are politically ordained people that have this work, and they sit in the committee to run the Western Wall. And this committee has regulations of how you need to act when you go to the Western Wall. So let's say, I'm sure some of you have been in the past few years, or even if you've been in the past 50 years, there's a way you have to dress when you get to the Western Wall. Okay, if you have a sleeveless shirt, then they'll ask you to put something on to cover yourself, so you're not showing your shoulders. You're not allowed to use loudspeakers there without special authorizations, in order for people not to interfere with each other's. There are many people there, many people having prayers. They don't want people to interfere each other. All sorts of regulations like that are in the core of the conflict between Women of the Wall and the Western Wall Heritage Fund and the authorities. Because what the authorities are saying, that Women of the Wall are breaking two of the main regulations in the Western Wall. The two are, first of all, that in the Kotel, in the Western Wall, you have to pray according to the custom of the place. Minhag hamakom. Okay, there is a custom that is the normal or basic custom, and in the Kotel you have to pray according to that. Now, and they were saying Women of the Wall are not praying according to the custom of the place, because they're praying out loud, and because they're praying with a talit or with tefilin, or want to read from the Torah, and that is not the custom here. And what Women of the Wall were saying, this regulation, first of all, is, I think, there's a reason, but it's very not specific. They put it in. There's a reason why they made it very not specific. They want people to interpret it in their way. So we interpreted it in our way, which means we are the custom. Why are we not the custom? We're the custom of Jews all around the world, Jews all around Israel. There are women who pray out loud, and there are women that pray with talit, and there are women that pray with tefillin. And that's the way Jews all around the world practice Judaism. And by not allowing us to practice Judaism in our way, we're basically shutting out all other Jewish identities, like mine, like yours maybe. It's like a small case study to the greater picture of Israel, of what happens when you decide what the right way of being Jewish is. And we were not willing to allow it in the Kotel. We were saying we have a different perspective of what this regulation means. We are minhag hamakom. And the second regulation is that in the Kotel, you're not allowed to do anything that's offensive to other people. Again, very not specific. What does that mean? Now, in a democracy, sometimes I do things that are offensive to someone else, and sometimes someone else does things that are offensive to me. And we find a middle ground where sometimes my feelings are hurt and sometimes his feelings are hurt. But in Israel, for many, many, many years, there was this concept that you can't hurt the feelings of the Haredi Israelis, the Haredi Jews, because they can't compromise in that concept. Okay, they can't compromise. You know, they can't see women with talitot. They can't. It's against their religious concept. So we have to be the ones that you know, are nice to their feelings. Now, for many years, it wasn't even thought that the concept of asking me not to be with my talit or to be quiet is also offensive to me. You know, that's okay. You can ask a woman to be quiet, but you can't ask a man to hear a woman. And I think that is, you know, why we're feminist, religious feminist prayer group, and we're a religious feminist group. And what we do is a feminist struggle, because the whole of the modern history has been men telling women that they can't do something because it was offensive to men, and women doing it anyway because they thought that they should, and women fighting to do it anyway. And that's how we've come to the very good place where we are right now in this perspective, okay? As I said in the beginning, I was a combat soldier. That's a thing that wasn't allowed in Israel 25 years ago. And someone had to fight for it. Someone had to fight to be the first pilot, the first woman pilot in Israel, to go into the course of being a pilot. And she actually didn't get to be a pilot in the end because she didn't pass the course, but another woman did instead. So we've come a long way. But what happens with Women of the Wall is that we are challenging this in the religious perspective. And in Israel, when you challenge something in a religious perspective, that is more problematic, because people say, well, the religious people can't compromise. They just can't compromise. And another thing is that the perspective of the secular Judaism or non-Orthodox Judaism is like something that isn't genuine, isn't the right thing. So people that are secular or that aren't Orthodox, they are, it's not, they're doing it out of ignorance or out of not having ideals. Okay, so it's like the Orthodoxy, the Haredim are full of ideals and are full of ideology. And then you come with the secular Judaism, Israeli, and that is not because he you know, the concept, yes, is because he's lazy, and is not, it's not an ideological thing. It's just because he doesn't want to be, you know, practice Judaism, and it's a bit lazy. And I think in the past few years in Israel, this is something that has changed a lot, saying we have ideals. The non-Orthodoxy Judaism has ideals. Feminism is an ideal. Education is an ideal. Serving in the army is an ideal. That's something that's very, very going on now in Israel. For many years, ultra-Orthodox soldiers, ultra-Orthodox men or people didn't have to enroll to the army. They still don't have to. And in the past few months, with the war in Israel and everything that's going on, this is becoming a very, very problematic issue, because there are people that are fighting now for 8 months, and have gone to reserve duty for 6 months out of 8. Okay, my brother-in-law has been 6 months out of 8 months in reserve duty. He's a 40-year-old man that has a job, that has 3 young daughters, and he's been out of home for 6 months, and there are other groups in the Israeli society that are just not giving their part. So these are the two regulations that have made the conflict between authorities to women of the wall. Now, I joined, like I said, Women of the Wall. It was 2008. I heard this woman was arrested. Again, I was not willing to accept it, so I joined Women of the Wall. Like I said, I've been ever since. I joined from the ideological part, like I said, because I grew up as a conservative Jew in the youth movement, I understand the injustice of what's going on there. But I stayed because it's a nice group of women. We have a community, a kehila, of women that are Orthodox, Reform, conservative, also a few secular women, which is something that I don't do all the time. When I go to synagogue, I go to a conservative synagogue and I pray that with that kehila. So once a month, I meet with my sisters from Women of the Wall. It's a very, very sisterhood thing. And we pray together once a month. Unfortunately, our prayer is a struggle. It's not something that's easy to do. So, that's another thing that some people, me included, stay for. Because I understand that I need to be there in order to make this prayer obvious, because it starts in the Kotel and it goes to the larger scale of what happens in Israel. I don't know if I said this, so I want to just make sure that we understand. The Kotel is a public space in Israel, okay? It's not a private synagogue. It's not a private place. It belongs to all the people in Israel. We pay our taxpayers' money for it. There's like 100 million shekels a year of budget that go to the running of the Kotel, because it's a very, very busy place and there are lots of maintenance things going on there. I'm saying this because it's important to understand that I pay for the Kotel too with my taxpayers' money. It's mine too. And it's also yours, because we believe that the state of Israel belongs to all Jews around the world. And the Kotel is a place where, you educate your kids about you. I know my cousin in Rio is the headmaster of Eliezer Max, something like that. And I've been there, and they have pictures of the Kotel in classrooms. That's what Jews around the world do. So it's an important place and it belongs to all of us. And we weren't willing to give up on these two regulations and say to the state of Israel, okay, you're right. It's yours. We weren't willing. We are minhag hamakom, and we are not hurting people's feelings. And if we are, I know we might be hurting people's feelings. We pray once a month at 7 a.m. in the women's section of the Kotel. No, again, I don't know when the last time you've been to the Kotel was. The women's section is like this size, and the men's section is like this size. It's much smaller. Okay, that's also not equal. And we are not allowed to use loudspeakers. As I said, you need a special authorization to use loudspeakers. And if someone wants to not hear and not see us, they cannot hear and not see us. They just need to come maybe at 8 o'clock on Rosh Chodesh morning, or that they can stand in the far area, or even not so far in the men's section, and they will not see and not hear the people that feel like we're interfering them, or the people that we're hurting their feelings, are there because they know that we're there and they don't like the concept of us. And that's why they come to interfere. So these two issues, the authorities and the people, have been going on for 35 years. Like I said, I joined Women of the Wall once in 2008. I joined one after we need to stop the screen share. And Nihad. Do you know how to? If you go to the share button in the bottom and just press stop share or something like that. Or Ismail can just stop the screen. That's the problem with giving everyone, but can you find it? Okay, I'll keep going. I hope he manages. So in 2000, I joined in 2008. There was a one-time arrest. And in 2012, this started happening again and again. I don't know why. It took like 4 years later, I was already a big part of the organization. And like I said, I kind of fell in love with the concept and with the group and with a group of women that we pray together. And you know, I was already part of the board, and in 2012, they started arresting us again every month for like 10 months. And this issue of the arrests in 2012 basically forwarded the issue of Women of the Wall. It made it heard, because suddenly people are talking about it in the news. Israelis know when Rosh Chodesh is because we're talking about it in the news. This was a very, very big issue. Why are the police arresting women because of the talitot? The talit was the issue. Okay, the prayer shawl, that's the issue. A woman with talit in Israel in 2014 is not allowed. And we weren't willing to give in to this. We don't understand why they started arresting us, who gave the command. Every prayer they came, they took 5 of the women, arrested them, had an inquiry, had an investigation, and told them not to come back for 30 days, which is just missing the next Rosh Chodesh, and let them go. And this gave our issue a big, you know, people were talking about it. It was very important, because suddenly everyone around the world was talking about it. We were in the New York Times like 3 times during this time. It was not good for the state of Israel that this is our, you know, this is our diplomacy, this is our face outside. And also it wasn't good in front of the Jewish world, okay? Most of Jews in the diaspora are not Orthodox Jews. You know this as well as I do. In South America, this is very, very clear. In North America, this is very clear. And when these people, when our friends from the United States came to Israel, then they could have been arrested for doing something that they do every Shabbat in synagogue. That's ridiculous. And that's something that the world jury was not willing to accept. So there was a lot of pressure on Netanyahu, that was prime minister then too, to solve this. And after like 10 months, a few things happened. First of all, Netanyahu gave the Jewish agency the mandate to find a solution. Okay, he said, figure this out, find a creative solution. And the head of the Jewish agency in that time, Natan Sharansky, came up with an idea to build another platform that is an egalitarian platform, that men and women can pray there together. It's in the continuation of the same wall. I'll show you in a second. And that was Sharansky's idea. The same month Sharansky came up with this idea, we went in front of the court because we were arrested like every month. There were these 5 women that were arrested, and they said that they're not willing to sign, that they're not coming back for 30 days. We at some point decided we're stopping this signing. We're not playing with the police anymore. If they want to arrest someone, you know, put someone in jail in Israel for having her talit on, then let's have that happen and see how that works. or someone needs to pay a fine, but they never did that. So we were waiting for something to happen. So they brought us in front of a judge, this 5 group of women, and the judge looked at all the footage, and she said, these women are minhag makom. They're praying according to the custom of the place. This looks like they've been doing this for a while. There's no problem with the prayer of women of the wall. And this is a ruling that was given in 2013, 11 years ago. And ever since, basically, our interpretation of the regulation in the Western Wall, according to minhag makom, sticks. We're allowed, we are minhag makom. Women of the wall's prayer is also the custom of the place. But as I said, while this was happening, they came up with this idea of a new egalitarian place. And we went into negotiation with the government on how this new area is going to look like. Now, we means Women of the Wall and the reform and conservative movements in Israel, reform and Masorti movements in Israel, together with the Jewish Agency. On the other side of negotiations, never sitting with us in the same room, were the ultra-Orthodox parties and the Western Wall Heritage Fund. They never sat with us in the same room. There was one government official that went from room to room to find a solution. But this was negotiations. This was a compromise, okay? We came up with some ideas and they came up with some ideas, and we came to a solution that in the end, the Western Wall Heritage Fund, the ultra-Orthodox, everyone was willing to accept. I'll show you the plans of this. So this agreement, we were in negotiations for 3 years with the government. It wasn't easy for Women of the Wall to be in these negotiations because, again, we are women's prayer group. We're not an egalitarian prayer group. We have Orthodox women with us. We're women's prayer group, and this area was supposed to be is an egalitarian area. And the idea was not everyone in Women of the Wall was very happy that we went to negotiations. But for us, it wasn't an easy decision, but it was an important decision because we want to be part of the discourse. We want to be heard. You know, the 2 movements in Israel had male CEOs at that time. So if we weren't sitting around the table, there again would be no women around the table, no one speaking the voice of women. So it was very important to us to be heard and to also be part of the negotiation, and also to say that we want to be part of the solution, not only of the problem. In 2013, when the idea was brought up, an egalitarian section was actually built. Now I will share. Wait. You disabled. Can you let me share again, Niad, and then we'll stop it again.
Yes, just a second. Is it working?
Yes.
Nice. Go ahead.
Okay. Yofi. So can you see can you see one photo or a lot of photos?
One photo.
Okay, Yofi. So this is what the place looked like when it was built in 2013, okay? It's an egalitarian section. I'll show you soon where it looks on the wall. It was built on scaffolds like this, very temporary. It was built overnight in the concept of having a place where people can pray together. So you see, this is the Western Wall, okay, of the temple. On the other side of this bridge that is in the upper side of the photo, that's where the normal kotel is, where the one we know. And this platform is basically the continuation of the same wall. It's the same place. Okay, it's the same wall. This is where they built it. The entrance is a bit before. It was built, like I said, overnight. It's not accessible. Okay, when you walk in, this was built again in 2013 in a concept that it won't stay temporary like it is, but the entrance is in a flight of stairs. You have to go down, and there's no restroom in the area. Still, many families from 2013 have come to celebrate their simchas, their bar and bat mitzvahs in that area, because again, for us, for liberal Jews, this is a wonderful solution. This is a wonderful place. They want to have an egalitarian ceremony where the mother can stand next to her son, where maybe the daughter can have a bat mitzvah, and a lot of people arrive, and this became a very popular place ever since it was built in 2013 on a temporary area. Okay, so this is what in 2016, after negotiation, this is what this area was supposed to look like. Okay, they came up with a final plan and the final agreement. This, again, the purple area is the kotel like we know it now. Here you can see the proportion of the men and women's areas, which is ridiculous. And here the blue area was supposed to be a very nice and big area for us to pray. And this agreement, I'll stop the share screen. This agreement passed in 2016 after long negotiations. And we were very happy. We, all the liberal Jews, we were very happy. We said, okay, what a wonderful solution. We can move there now. But we're not moving till all the parts of the agreement are settled, okay? Until they build this exactly the way it's built, until it gets the funding the way it's supposed to get the funding. We waited and waited. And Women of the Wall said, we don't need to move to this area because we have already the ruling from the court that we're allowed to pray the way we want. Moving to this area is a compromise that we don't do till we don't, till all sides don't compromise. So we waited. Meanwhile, people did start coming to that place because people, again, we have a women's prayer, so for us, the women's section is okay. But for anyone who wants an egalitarian prayer, they can go there. The Masorti movement in Israel runs this area. So if you come now and you want to get a Torah scroll or Sidurim, then you can make sure with the conservative movement in Israel, and they will provide this. There's actually a rabbi called Sandra that's in charge there. She also knows Portuguese. So you can go and you can pray there. That the place is open and running, and many people want to use it. In the normal day, not a day that they're bar and bat mitzvah, most people would go to the known kotel because, again, it's building a narrative that there's also this place. So it's becoming more and more known and more popular, but still it's not something that the normal Jew knows about. So Women of the Wall stayed in the women's section, waiting for this place to be built, to open officially. And in 2016, this kotel agreement passed, and we were very happy, and everyone was celebrating. But we waited for construction, and nothing happened. And we were waiting, and in 2018, Netanyahu was still prime minister. He froze the kotel agreement. He said, it's not able to happen. There was too much backlash from the ultra-Orthodox street. Now, the ultra-Orthodox, the Haredi authorities, the Haredi Knesset members and ministers knew that this was going to happen. They were part of the negotiations, but they probably didn't expect the backlash of their public to be so dramatic. So the agreement froze in 2018, and ever since we've been in the same place. Okay, the kotel, the egalitarian kotel, looks like what it looked 10 years ago when it was built. It's still on scaffolds now. There are sun umbrellas if you want, but it still looks the same. And there's even a section that you can touch the wall, you can touch the kotel, that has been closed for 5 years because a stone fell from the kotel a few years ago. And then they did all the checks that this won't happen again. This happened, thankfully, in 5 a.m. There was one woman standing there, and it didn't fall on her, the stone, but it was dangerous. And they closed this area, and they haven't opened it since, again, because of little political pettiness of the Jerusalem municipality, of one ultra-Orthodox person in the Jerusalem municipality that is stopping the opening of this section, even though basically it could be open. So the conservative movement runs that place. You can go, you can pray there. Again, it's not accessible. There's no restroom. It doesn't get any funds from the state, but it's still run. And women of the wall are still in the women's section in the Kotel. We still have the two main issues that I said before. First of all, authorities, again, there's still, even though we have the court ruling that we are allowed to pray the way we want in the Western Wall, the main issue nowadays is the Torah scroll, is the Sefer Torah. There are 150 Torah scrolls for the public use in the Kotel, but you can only use them if you are male. Because you can only use them in the men's section of the Kotel. So, and you can't bring a Torah scroll from outside in, okay? In Israel, every place has metal detectors, has this security place. You're not allowed to bring a Torah scroll from outside the Kotel inside. If Western Wall Heritage Fund ushers finds you with a Torah scroll, then they take it away. So we have been able to smuggle Torah scrolls in ways that I can't tell you. I'll show you a bit of how we did it. But we've been able to smuggle Torah scrolls in, but it's not the proper way to do. We need to smuggle Torah scrolls. Well, this is things that Jews did in Inquisition times. It's ridiculous. So there were a few months where we read from this tiny Torah scroll. I don't know if you can see, it's on the table, and there's like a magnifying glass. This was a Torah scroll that was used in Inquisition, and this happened a few years ago. At some point we said we're not willing to do that because it's so small, so it was easier for us to take. This is the size. There were a few months when we just passed the Torah scroll from the men's section to the women's section. This is the mechitza. This is a separation in the Kotel. So we just opened the mechitza, passed the Torah scroll from the men's section to the women's section. The guards were very unhappy. This is what the Kotel looks like from now every Rosh Chodesh prayer. There's 2 mechitzot, just so we don't do that again. But we've been successful in different ways. We're religious women. It's very important for us to not to degrade the Torah scroll, and to, if we smuggle it in, to do it in a respectful way. But because we do it, then we go through body searches. Now, this is again a very flattering photo of me, but it's very clear to any person with a brain that I don't have a Torah scroll on my body, okay? You can see my body, I don't have a Torah scroll on it. And what the police, what the security guard is doing is harassment, because in Israel, the security checks are there in order for us not to bring in weapons, not in order not to bring in Torah scrolls. The idea that they don't want us to bring in Torah scrolls is ridiculous, and the harassment that we go through in order for us not to bring in Torah scrolls is also ridiculous. So we are fighting to bring a Torah scroll in. Again, we're successful sometimes, we're not successful other times. There's an MK, Chaver Knesset, a person in the Israeli parliament these days that is a reform rabbi. He was the head of the reform movement in Israel. He's called Gilad Kariv. And in Israel, it might be the same in Brazil, the members of parliament have immunity. so he can walk in without them checking him. So he has bought for us the Torah scroll in a few times. At some point, it also became unsuccessful because the security guards just stand around him and they don't let him give us the Torah scroll. So that's a big problem for us. The authorities don't like us. Like I said we're not allowed to use loudspeakers. So every Rosh Chodesh, 7 in the morning, there's a special authorization from the Western Wall, the person in charge of the Western Wall, to use a loudspeaker in the men's section, okay, to echo a prayer, a men's prayer, while we have to, there's a chazanit that has to, a woman leading the prayer that has to stand there and try to lead the prayer, while it's very difficult to do it without loudspeaker when there's another loudspeaker. So that still goes on. The authorities are still not enough, we think, supporting us. But the second issue that has become worse in the past few years is the violence against us. There's always been, but with the extremism of the Israeli society in different issues, it was, and we've had many elections in the past 5-6 years in Israel, there was something that was very easy to come and protest against Women of the Wall, because we happen once a month. It's very clear when. It's like they put us as the progressive loonies, progressive crazy women that it's easy to come and protest against. And there are groups that bought buses and came to protest against us every month for months and months and months. And now then what they do is bring young girls and they fill up the women's section and they try and stand between us while we're praying, and they try and then interfere with our prayer. And sometimes it's just, them standing, and sometimes it escalates and they curse and they yell while we're praying. And it can also escalate to violence. So I had, I think, my two major attacks. One was a few years ago. I'll make you see this. It's a very, again, an unflattering photo of my arm after a 16-year-old girl pinched me. I don't know how she did it, how it's so big, but this stayed on my arm for a long time. And I did file a complaint to the police, but nothing happened. I got the letter that the complaint was closed. I saw on the date, it was the same day I filed the complaint. They don't know who the girl is, so they closed the complaint. The really big attack that we had 3 years ago, with that I'll finish and I'll open up for questions, was on Rosh Chodesh Tammuz 3 years ago, which is coming up. We arrived to the Kotel in the morning, me with my friends to the prayer, and we started walking in when a group of boys took our bag that we had the prayer books in, the sidurim, and because the sidurim are with thin, they're not hardback, they started ripping them. This is not an easy video, so I hope we're able to see it. 1 second. So you see, it's not only young kids, it's also grown-up men that are taking the name of the Lord and ripping it. It's not allowed in any concept of Judaism. It was a very violent attack. You know, if this were to happen in Porto Alegre, the authorities would there would be so much pressure to find someone that did this. This would be considered an anti-Semitic attack. They were ripping, they were yelling, they took the pieces of paper in my hand, they were throwing it on the floor. It was dreadful. And you can't see it in the video, but obviously there's a group of security guards standing around there because they're there all the time, because the Kotel is a very, very secure place, doing nothing on this anti-Semitic attack, looking at me, picking up the pieces and doing nothing. And we filed a complaint, and a few months ago, we got a letter that the complaint was closed, that they couldn't find anyone responsible. This was like a red line for us. We said, no way, no way. Like, this is an attack. The Kotel is one of the most videoed places in the world, okay? If you go now in Google and write Western Wall cameras, you can see what's going on now in the Kotel, 3 a.m. in the Kotel, okay? They know who did this. They might not have the name, but they have the picture. Someone should be held responsible for this. So they reopened the case, but nothing has happened yet. We're waiting, okay? They did call me a few months ago to ask a few questions, a few follow-up questions. But again, this is 3 years later, so we don't know if they will actually find anyone, if anyone will pay a price. And that being said, the Minister of Police in Israel is one of the most extreme right-wing religious people that we've ever had in this position. And he came to protest against us 2 years ago before he became a minister, okay? He doesn't like us. So I'm not sure what even an investigation today in this political climate in Israel will do. But it's still very, very problematic, and the violence is very problematic. That being said, I do invite you to join us when you come to Israel. It's a very interesting sociologically place to be, also ideologically, because it's important to come and support, but also sociologically. A lot of the times in Women of the Wall prayer, there's dialogue with these girls that come, and the school send them. So many of the times, people during the prayer can speak to these girls or try to understand, sometimes try to understand, sometimes try to see. And I want to finish before I open to questions to say that I also think this has a very important educational process on these Haredi girls, okay? In the end, they've seen a woman with a talit, okay? They're shocked. They go back to their parents. They say, I can't believe I saw a woman with a talit. They laugh at us. They think we're ridiculous. Because they're 16-year-old girls, then their rhetorics are very, adolescent. So they call us ugly or whatever, very, very critical things to say. But they, in the end, they saw a woman in talit. So in 4 or 5 years from now, they will remember this, and maybe someday they will become less fanatic and less religious, and they'll also want to practice something. So we'll see in 5, 6 years, we'll see a big group of Haredi girls coming to join us, or going to Reform or conservative synagogues. But this is the situation like it is now. We have a few minutes for questions.
Tammy, I'm gonna ask questions in Portuguese because I know that people, some of we are not with interpretation. So Heidi will help us. So, pessoal, eu confesso que eu tô meio chocado com... Heidi, eu não sei se tu pode ir interpretando ao inverso. Mas eu tô chocado com tudo isso, sinceramente.
Maybe they can just ask and you can translate, and then I'll hear you.
Ok. Esther Zurman tem uma pergunta. Esther, pode fazer a pergunta e aí a Rede traduz.
She's muted.
Yeah. Just a second, Heidi. Só um segundo. Esther, eu mandei um pedido para você tirar do mudo. Tem que tirar o microfone do mudo para fazer a pergunta.
Eu tirei, desativar o
legal. Pode fazer a pergunta. Obrigado, Esther.
Ok. Eu posso fazer para ela em hebraico e traduzir para o português? Ou eu falo em português e a Ed traduz para o inglês para ela, porque eu poderia conversar com ela em hebraico também. Como é que eu faço?
Vamos improvisar vamos improvisar. Vai no que você acha melhor e a gente vê o que dá.
Tá, aí eu vou fazer o seguinte, eu vou falar com ela em hebraico e logo em seguida eu vou traduzir para o português a minha pergunta.
Perfeito.
אוקיי. תמי, אני רוצה לדבר איתך בעברית ישירות. את יכולה לשמוע אותי?
כן. איזה עברית יפה.
יופי, תודה רבה. אני רוצה להגיד לך ככה, אני מאוד מאוד התרשמתי כששמעתי אותך, כי את יודעת, כל מה שאת הבאת לנו היום, זה באמת דברים ששומעים אותם, את יודעת, בחדשות, רואים אותם דרך העיתונות, אבל לראות פתאום, את יודעת, מישהי שככה מציגה לנו את זה בצורה כזאת כל כך ממשית, וכל כך ריאליסטית כמו שאת עשית את זה, אני מאוד 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 התרשמתי. אני רוצה להגיד לך את זה, זה קודם כל. והשאלה שלי לגבי כל מה שאת אמרת, אני באמת ככה לא כל כך מבינה, ופה אני רוצה לשאול אותך. תראי, יהודים שגרים בחוץ לארץ בגולה, מאוד מקובל ללכת לבית הכנסת שאתה רוצה. אם אתה באמת חרדי, אתה הולך לבית כנסת חרדי. אם אתה קונסרבטיבי, כמו שאת אמרת לי, אתה הולך לבית כנסת קונסרבטיבי. אם אתה יותר רפורמי או יותר פרוגרסיב, מה שהם קוראים לזה פה, אתה הולך. ותראי, יש פה קהילה גדולה, לאו דווקא אני מדברת על פורטו אלגרה, אני מדברת גם על כל ברזיל. יש פה יהודים יותר קונסרבטיביים, יש פחות, יש גם, את יודעת, רפורמים, באמת, את יודעת, אתה לא כל כך מסכים עם זה, אתה מה זה, אבל יש פה באמת, מה שקוראים לזה, אתה מקבל את זה, ואתה רואה את זה בצורה מאוד חיובית, ואני קצת הופתעתי לראות כמה שזה קשה, לראות את זה בצורה כל כך, בוא נאמר ככה, לדעתי מובנת מאליו, למה שנשים, או אפילו, בוא נאמר ככה, כל המגזר של הרפורמה, שאנחנו נגיד, כל הרפורמיסט, או הקונסרבטים בארץ, למה לא מקבלים אותם? זאת אומרת, למה דווקא בארץ, אני רוצה לדעת? זאת השאלה שלי בעצם. ואני עכשיו רוצה לתרגם את זה לפורטוגזית, אוקיי?
לא, אוקיי, כן.
Então, eu gostaria, assim, de colocar o que eu falei com a Tami. Em primeiro lugar, eu disse para ela, assim, que eu estou bastante impressionada com o que ela traz para nós, uma pessoa que vive lá, uma pessoa que mora em Israel, filha, assim, de... né, ingleses e cariocas, não importa, brasileiros. Eu estou bastante assim, impressionada de ouvir esse depoimento dela e estou bastante surpresa, porque eu disse para ela o seguinte, tudo que ela me trouxe, tudo que ela traz para a gente, que ela trouxe para a gente, são coisas que eu acompanho pelos jornais, pela televisão, mas eu nunca tive assim, presente a um depoimento como o dela, que eu estou bastante impressionada. E a minha pergunta especificamente para ela é a seguinte, Nós vivemos aqui no Brasil, mas seja no Brasil, seja no exterior, é muito comum nós termos nas comunidades judaicas judeus ortodoxos, judeus conservadores, judeus reformistas, e que nós convivemos com essa com essa diversidade religiosa, nem se falando que nós temos judeus laicos. Então, a minha pergunta especificamente para a Tami é por que justamente em Israel existe essa, não é só oposição, eu diria assim, essa, como é que eu vou dizer isso? Não é só que existe
Intolerância?
uma oposição, uma intolerância, mas é uma intolerância, assim, cruel. Eu acho ela
Aham.
bastante cruel que ela trouxe hoje para nós. Isso não só assim que me chocou, como você falou, mas questiona, é um ponto de interrogação muito grande. Como em Israel, sim, nós sabemos que não tem a divisão entre Estado e religião. Nós sabemos que em Israel só se pratica casamentos religiosos. Quem quer se casar em Israel, então vai para a Grécia, vai para Chipre, vem para o Brasil, não importa. Mas essa falta de tolerância me incomodou muito de escutar. E por que que ela acha, justamente como filha de pais que já conhece, imagino, a comunidade da Inglaterra, conhece o Rio de Janeiro, por que que justamente em Israel isso tomou esse matiz? Essa é a minha pergunta para a Tami.
Okay. The reason why this happens in Israel is politics and power. Okay? The ultra-Orthodox received here power in an agreement that they made with Ben-Gurion in 48 in order to be a part of the Zionist idea. Okay, Ben-Gurion wanted them to be on board with the Zionist idea, and they weren't in the beginning. But then he gave them this power of being in charge bureaucratically of everything to do with religion. So the concept of religion in Israel has become religion equals orthodoxy. Being a Jew in Israel means being an Orthodox or being an observant Jew. This is why. And they have so much power, and power comes also with power, but also with money, that they just don't want to give away. Because the moment you start funding synagogues and you say conservative and reform synagogues are also considered synagogues, that means more of the budget goes to more synagogues. And chaval, why would anyone want to do that? And the moment you say that conservative and reform rabbis are also can do wedding ceremonies, then the Orthodox rabbis will do less wedding ceremonies and they lose from their power. Now, they also have this is not only power and budget, they also believe that our Judaism is the wrong Judaism, okay? They don't believe that the way we practice is the right way to practice. And because they have all the power, they can decide that maybe they don't agree with it ideologically or halachically or in a Jewish way. And that doesn't matter because they can decide. The moment, they say this is not the way it should be. And because they're deciding, then it's not the way it happens. That's it. And that's why it has to be a fight. But we're fighting it. We're not letting it go because we want to continue living here. So it's important for us to fight it.
Yeah. Tami, thank you. Let's see if you have more questions. Se alguém tiver pergunta, por favor, coloca no chat ou pode falar e aí a gente faz a tradução. Então, se alguém tiver mais perguntas, por favor, fique à vontade de fazer as perguntas. Enquanto eu não vejo aqui, deixa eu ver na tela se alguém... Você pode fazer a sua pergunta em hebraico, em inglês, português. A gente vai tentar achar uma solução aqui para...
Pergunta is question?
Yes.
Yeah, I learned.
Yeah. Tami, really, I'm shocked. I feel bad. It's like I would like to help, to know how we can help in some way, even if we are in Brazil, US, it doesn't matter. Please, let's try to share with us one way or many ways where we can help, because I have no words to explain that, to figure out how it's crazy. Sorry.
No, it's okay. You know, I've been doing this for a while and I enjoy it. Okay, it's not for everyone. Not everyone enjoys the fight and enjoys the. I don't know if enjoy is the right word, but I gain from it a lot. You know, and I'm very, very thankful for the right to be part of this organization, to feel like I'm making Israel a better place. I hope it will make Israel a better place. A lot of our supporters are not in Israel. Okay, we are an organization that we have support from the Israeli public, but again, it's waking up in 7 a.m. So a lot of our supporters our community is an online community. We have all the social media options, and obviously not only, you can be in touch with us not only, but on Facebook and on Instagram and on TikTok. And a lot of people support us like that. They wait up till 12 o'clock in your thing, or no, maybe with you it's a bit later. It might be 2 a.m.
Yeah, exactly.
And they watch us. They watch our prayer. And then when they come to Israel, I think maybe that's one thing that you can do. In the times that you do come, make sure that you come in a time which is a Women of the Wall prayer and join us, even though it's 7 a.m. And I think one of the strongest thing diaspora Jews can do is talk about it. I think in South America, the strong thing is that many Israelis come to travel. And for many Israelis, the first time they meet liberal Judaism is in their big after army trip to South America. Okay. So if you have, and they just don't understand. They come into the synagogue and suddenly there's a woman with a talit, and they'll be respectful because they're coming into your synagogue. But that would be the first time that they see. And it's important for Israeli young people to understand that it's a problem, that it's not, the fact that they haven't seen it till now is not because they were uneducated. It's because that, the streams don't get enough place to fight, in an open market of synagogues. And when sometimes politicians also, or people with influence also come and visit, CEOs of companies, the thing is to talk this talk. Have you heard about Women of the, when you meet an Israeli, to ask, have you heard about Women of the Wall? When something big happens, to try and influence, to write emails. And I'll say, to close this, that I'm sure you read this when you talked about my bio, but I'm also part of the World Zionist Organization, okay, yeah. Which is an organization that is like the government of the Jewish people. And once every 5 years, there are elections to the World Zionist Organization. And in this forum of the World Zionist Organization, the liberal movements have parties. Okay, the reform movement is called Arza or Arzeinu, and the conservative movement is called Merkaz, and there are elections for this. I don't know exactly how it goes on in Brazil. I think I think they will have elections now. Last time there was something that went wrong, but when the elections go on, you need to vote. Okay, we need you to vote, because that is the way for us to influence Jewish peoplehood in another way, and to influence Israel. You do have a voice once every 5 years in the elections to the World Zionist Organization, and the moment the elections start running, I'll make sure that you know about it, and I'll make sure that the movement informs you, and all you have to do is vote, and that's also very, very important.
Yeah, Tammy, thank you. I have two more questions. For now, two questions. First one, do you have some idea of chapters or something outside of Israel to help you, or like chapters, your chapters or representatives, in some way to raise your flags and help, or not yet? What do you think
Listen,
about?
what we do is pray in the Kotel on Rosh Chodesh. So that's something that's a bit difficult to do outside. I think and also it's a very Israeli struggle in the end, okay? Because the problem is the lack of pluralism in Israel. I think the chapters outside of Israel are the liberal streams, and making the liberal streams stronger is something that we all, I mean, it's something that I think we should all do together, and that you're doing. You know, what we're doing now is part of this. Obviously, there's all the fundraising and all those things. And when I come to Brazil, I'm happy to come to Porto Alegre. I've never been, but I don't know when the next time I'm coming to Brazil. But I'll make sure that I come to visit you. But we don't really have chapters. You can just try and stay in touch with me, with Women of the Wall on social media, and see if we need you. Then we'll make sure we use you.
I get it. The second question is from Katya. She asked, let me see. She asked, she feel like the Orthodox religious guys are trying to destroy Israel. She's scared about that, and she's asking, what do you feel about? What do you think about?
I agree. I don't know if they're doing it on purpose. I think they're doing it because I think they're doing it because they are, again, they had all the power, and it's very scary to lose the power. Now I do think what's going on this week is a bit of a war, or political war. Okay, they're saying we will die and not going to the army, or something like that. Okay, they don't want to be helpful citizens of the Jewish state. So obviously their motivation isn't to ruin Israel. It's not in order for Israel not to exist. It's in order for Israel to be more, in their perspective, like be more religious. And unfortunately, it's a fight because we don't want Israel to be more religious. So we have to find the right way for our democracy to stay a democracy and not a theocracy.
Yeah, it's so complex. It's not easy. We have to try answers, but one answer it's not enough. I feel like that. I don't know. Bela, você pode fazer a pergunta. Só tirar do mudo, tá? Para fazer a pergunta.
Posso fazer?
Pode fazer a pergunta.
Tá me ouvindo, Nihad?
Perfeito, ótimo.
Primeiro eu quero agradecer a Tami pela palestra maravilhosa e ao mesmo tempo chocante, com todos os detalhes que ela conseguiu trazer para nós, de toda essa luta, dessa conquista que as mulheres do Muro querem fazer. E eu desejo a elas, não é propriamente uma pergunta que eu faço, porque uma coisa que me choca muito, sempre que eu ouço falar das dificuldades que esse grupo de mulheres tem, é que as hostilidades tão cruéis que vêm desse grupo de ortodoxos, vêm justamente de pessoas que amanhecem o dia rezando Modealine Fareja, né, que agradece a vida a cada manhã, e passam o dia rezando e vêm justamente de pessoas que estão em contato, não sei como que conseguem esse contato com Deus, para ter, em contrapartida, atitudes tão miseráveis, né, que a gente vê, e indo assim muito ao contrário do que, imagina, rasgar Sidurim é uma coisa muito forte, não é? Mas então o meu agradecimento à Tami, como eu disse, não é exatamente uma pergunta, mas é o desejo de que eles tenham boa sorte nessa caminhada, e é louvável essa perseverança dela e desse grupo, e que continuem assim, que um dia, quem sabe, que seja breve, que as coisas mudem. Parabéns para a Tami.
Uh, I will try to translate quickly because we have a few time, and I'm not a translator, so let's try to be in the right way. And she said, thank you so much for your sharings. And also she said, it's not easy for you. It's like Orthodox branch fighting against you, but it's like a paradox because they at morning they are praying, and after that they are fighting against you. It's a nonsense way to, I don't know, fight.
Yeah.
It's a miserable act. So she said at the end, stay strong. She said at the end a very important sentence, stay strong. So thank you.
Muito obrigada.
Oh, more questions I see here. Elonis, he said, the video was shocking. It's like anti-Semitic acts against Jewish people. It's like love someone it's present in Torah, but the act is in the opposite way. There is no question. It's like just sharing. Sharing. So that's it.
Okay.
I have a feeling that after this meeting, we are going to talk a lot about this. A lot.
So if you have questions,
good.
Mario has my number.
Yeah.
Sometimes I answer, but I'm happy to talk to anyone. Mario, you can give my number if anyone needs, or my email, and we will be in touch. And thank you very much for having me. And boa noite to everyone. And Hedy, thank you so much. This was probably very, very difficult, but I'm happy it worked with a translation. So,
Tami, if you need something, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
If you need something in US, call me. I'm here.
I will next time.
Please.
Yeah.
Again,
Bye.
Thank you. And
You're
see you
welcome.
again.
Bye.
Abraço a todos. Obrigado pela participação de todo mundo.
Thank you,
Obrigado pela paciência.
Thank you very much. Obrigado, Hedy. Mas impressiona. It's impressive what you bring. The fight of women to be respected in their religious manifestation. Thank you very much, Tami.
Importante destacar que lá onde a Tami está, Jerusalém, 2, 3 da manhã. Então, assim, a dedicação e o esforço dela para esse evento foi algo bastante importante. E eu quero agradecer de novo a Heidi por todo o trabalho que ela fez. Há muitos anos ela não estava fazendo tradução e a gente nem sequer perguntou para ela, pode ou não pode. A gente já falou, a gente precisa de ti. Então, assim, obrigado, Heidi. Obrigado mesmo. Obrigado pela presença de todo mundo e principalmente obrigado pela paciência de vocês, porque eu sei que muitos não funcionou o recurso. Talvez a gente tinha que ter explicado isso antes do evento, mas organizar esse evento com gente de fora, confesso que para mim foi a primeira vez, então desculpem qualquer erro, eu peço minhas desculpas, mas é a realidade de quem não tem experiência nesse tipo de situação. Então, é isso. E depois eu queria, sincero, de coração, se vocês puderem compartilhar assim, ó, em que a gente pode melhorar, manda para mim, por favor, dicas de como a gente pode melhorar para fazer melhor, para ir evoluindo, porque se vocês se sentirem à vontade, a gente pode futuramente convidar outras pessoas de fora. Eu, o Mário, inclusive vocês, eu tenho certeza que vocês têm muitos nomes de gente de fora do Brasil que a gente pode convidar, melhorar a tradução e entregar algo de valor para todo mundo aqui. Não esquece, essa palestra vai estar amanhã disponível no YouTube. Nossa, estou tão feliz de ver o Carlos presente aqui. Muito obrigado pela presença. E também estou feliz. Olha só, a primeira vez que vejo o filhote da caixa. Ó. Oi! Então, assim, gente, muito obrigado e de coração. Vamos melhorar no que a gente puder, tá bom?
Mas foi muito
Super
bom,
abraço para vocês.
fluiu. Foi muito
Foi
bom,
excelente.
demais.
Lihad, muito obrigado. O teu trabalho aparece e faz a diferença. Muito obrigado.
Obrigado. Um abraço para todo mundo.
Também, tá? Obrigada.
Tchau, tchau.
Renato.
Obrigado, Renato.
Lalatov.
Vai lá.
Tchau.
Obrigada. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.